Welcome to episode 44 of the 24-Hour Hustle Show. And today we got special guest, author, CEO, and media strategist, Brianne Mitchell. Welcome to the 24-Hour Hustle Show. I'm your host, Anthony Freeze, and this is the show where we are killing excuses of time and bringing on guests that are sharing amazing stories, their struggles, and also their success. If this is the very first time you are finding us, definitely make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you turn on notifications so that you can get these every single time that we post. But today we got Bree on the show. I am so glad we got the opportunity to connect over Facebook and get the opportunity to find out about all the things that you're doing with, your businesses and also writing your children's book and just learning about your story. Definitely inspired me, motivated me, moved me, and I just really appreciate that time that we got the chance to sit down. And I'm so glad to have you on the show today to be able to share. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here on the 24-Hour Hustle.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. We all got that same time to be able to make things happen. So I'm definitely excited for you to be able to share what you're doing because you have a lot going on, a lot on your plate, and you're definitely maximizing on your time, and you have no excuses, and you're getting it done. So I definitely want to get into the conversation. So for people who don't know who you are yet, give us your name, your background, and some of the things that you've done leading up to this point of getting into these children's books.
Sure. So my name is Brianne Mitchell. I am first and foremost a mom and a wife, and my children are Della and Lilah of the Della and Lilah book series. And I taught I was a college professor. I taught at the university level before I retired from teaching to go into business with my husband, with my family. And it eventually became a true family business when my children got involved and we came up with the Della and Lilah book series.
And that's awesome. And we're definitely going to get into that story because, like I said, whenever you shared that with me, I was amazed. Just in, kind of even figuring out a little bit more of your backstory and just how you were raised and kind of just how you developed your mindset over time. Now, are you born and raised in Pittsburgh or where you from?
Yes, I am. So born and raised in southwestern Pennsylvania, about 45 minutes south of the city, and I actually live now with my family in the house that I grew up in.
Oh, wow.
So we have strong roots in our community, and my husband and I wanted to raise our daughters around our family. We thought that was very important, and that was a very important part of our decision whenever we decided, so after graduate school and after he went to law school, where we were going to eventually end up, and we ended up in the house that I grew up in. So
that's amazing.
We're right there. We live in the woods along the Monongahela River, and we're with our family, and we live in a small community, and I think that shaped a lot of who I am, where I came from, where I currently come from, where my children were born and raised, and I think that has a lot to do with it.
Absolutely. And what would you say inspired you to become a teacher? I mean, because writing the books definitely feels like that lines up reasonably and really perfectly, actually. So what inspired you to become or get into the teaching field?
That's a really good question. So my very first class in college as a freshman, I was at Virginia Tech, and it was Monday at 9 a.m. and all students were required to take 2 semesters of a language. So I signed up for Spanish, and I walked into the Spanish class, and my professor was there, and she was this incredibly intelligent woman, and she spoke several languages, and she told me about her, she told the entire class, of course, about her experience growing up, learning these languages and wanting to educate. And I thought it sort of aligned, with my story. I was not a student of the languages, but I was a student. And I love to learn, and I love to teach, and I thought that would really align with who I was and what I wanted to do, and I knew that it would require a lot of schooling, and I knew that it would require teaching part-time. I taught at a community college before I was an adjunct at a university, and before I eventually became a full-time instructor, full-time faculty member at a university for several years. I put the work in. I put the hustle in.
Yeah.
And so I knew that it would take the time, but I always had that in mind. I wanted to teach these young adults who were on the verge of the rest of their lives, and I thought that was a really important transition time as a student, as a human, as a person, and I sort of wanted to be right in that moment with them.
That's awesome. And so what happened, or when did you get into the point where you transitioned to, being a CEO, being an entrepreneur, and things like that? Because you say you were doing the law firm with your husband. So how did you get from being a teacher to transition into doing that with your husband?
So as I mentioned, we live in a small town, in a small community, and my husband and I decided that is where, we wanted to raise our children. So my husband was practicing law and acting as a bail surety agent in our small town. And so when you're practicing law in a small town, it's good to be a general practitioner, and not necessarily specialize in something. And so his clientele was growing and his business was growing, and he approached me and said, I have a couple of things to talk to you about. I'm considering expanding. What are your thoughts? I'm also considering purchasing a large commercial property. What do you feel? How do you feel about this? So we always knew that we worked well together. We work well together. We sort of think along the same wavelength. And I said, well, that's great. Let's do it. And he said, okay, done. We eventually turned that commercial building into a restaurant. We had a contract with Starbucks, so everything that Starbucks offered, we were able to offer in Brownsville. The law firm was growing. He needed help, and he needed 24-hour help, because a lot of clients needed him in the middle of the night. He was going out late, so it was kind of hard early on to find an employee, to ask an employee to do something like that. Hey, can you work at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Right.
Or 3 in the morning. So it was just a natural transition that I would assist him as a partner, and then we grew together, and it grew and it grew and it grew, and we brought on more people, and we went from just practicing law and writing surety bail to being more of to transitioning into social services. So our clients needed us. They needed help with placement in rehabilitation facilities or social services or domestic help, and so I worked with a lot of the women and children in that aspect, and my husband, Mitch, worked with his clients, setting up housing, setting up different programs, assistance programs, and legal help. So it wasn't just we're going to do your legal work. It was sort of like, let me help you with whatever it is that you need help with. And so he found comfort in that, and he enjoyed doing that. That sort of transitioned us into a philanthropic approach, a philanthropic lens to our business, and how can we give back and how can we help, because there are certainly a lot of people who need our help, and that eventually led into what we do with the book series as well.
And that's awesome, yeah, and we're definitely going to get into that for sure. Now, and also you do media, you're a media strategist as well.
I am.
Now, did that come before the books or afterwards?
That came before the books.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, so it's a lot of fun. It was really fun. So I taught social media as a college professor. That was one of my courses. So I taught.
Man, I would have took that class all day.
It was a lot of fun, and it was right at the beginning of Twitter and sort of right at the transition between MySpace into Facebook. So we had all these textbooks, and we were doing all this research, and we were I had 2 partners in the department, and we were just trying to figure out what the best approach was, and how can we teach this most effectively, as you would do with all of your courses when you're working on your syllabi and developing curriculum. But that was so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so fun. It was brand new at the time. It was so exciting. And so we researched it on an academic level. So, and almost, we looked at the qualitative data, we looked at the quantitative data, and we sort of brought that all together, and we said, how can we best serve these students? How can we teach them to go out and utilize social media within their businesses, not even knowing that social media would be the business itself or the career itself. So it started through academics and education, and then through the law firm we had clients who would say, how can I most maximize my business? They would come in for contractual reasons, or they needed documents proofed or prepared, and Mitch would be able to say, well, you can talk to Bree about sort of marketing your business, a little bit better. And they would say, well, I put up signs, or I did this, or I did that. And he would say, well, let's talk about social media, and let's talk about how to best integrate that strategy for your business. So we worked with so many different businesses. Other law firms, financial firms, entrepreneurs, bakeries, horse barns, dance studios, and other professional organizations. And of course we volunteered our time and our expertise in the legal realm and also in the social media realm for a lot of nonprofits in the area. So we were able to
awesome.
Help. Yeah,
well, that's good.
That way.
That is awesome.
It's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet.
Yes.
Yeah. So actually, since we're on the topic, what's actually some good maybe social media or marketing advice, or how can people be more effective with using their social media to build their business, or even what's something that people should be doing that they're not doing?
Okay, so you need content. You need content. You have to produce your content. And I work with a business coach. So I work with a business coach. Her name is Darius Chisholm, who was on the 24-Hour Hustle.
Absolutely.
And
Episode 9.
Yeah. So I work with Darius. So I think, and Darius holds me accountable. So I think that, or I really feel that in order to be successful, you need to have accountability, and you need to be able to be held accountable for what you're doing, especially as an entrepreneur when you're working by yourself. So having someone to be accountable to it is really, really helpful. And also knowing your audience. So if you're marketing to a specific demographic, and that specific demographic doesn't utilize your social media platform, because if, let's say, for example, you're marketing to you're marketing a product, or you're marketing your service to homeowners, right? So homeowners are usually of this age and of this financial bracket, and you're running stories on Snapchat, like that demographic may not be utilizing that social media platform. So you have to know your demographic, and you have to know who you're marketing to. And the third tip I have, of course, is content. Get your content out there. Content. Create your brand, follow your brand, and create your content. You have to get your content out there. You can't say, or it would be a disservice to say, I have a podcast. Here are my 2 episodes.
Right.
You need your 50 episodes in a year, which is exactly what you're doing. You're on track for that. So you have to have your content. And Darius taught me, because I was very stuck on perfection, and I would edit down to the final numbers and to the final cuts, and she would say, it's okay. It's okay if you're at 85%. Get your content out there. So creating content, getting your content out there, knowing your demographics, and being held accountable are all very important aspects of social media.
Those are definitely good tips. I'm glad you shared that as well. Now we can actually get into the book, because I love this story, and I can't wait for you to share it as well, because like I said, you have, 2 kids?
Yes, 2 little girls.
You had 2 different businesses at the time when you were doing this, or getting into the transition, about to start another one?
Well, we had probably about 3.
Okay, all right. That makes the story even more juicier.
At the time, there were about 3
Okay.
things we were juggling.
Okay, so let's get into the story of how you were able to create this children's book. You've been able to get it out there to the world. You've been able to share with a lot of children and just people, and just be able to add a lot of value to people out there. So how did this come about? How did this story end up being created?
Okay, so this is out of all of the things that my husband and I have done, and I've done personally in regard to business or work or professional careers, this is absolutely my my cherry on top, my heartfelt project, this comes from the heart, from a really deep place of love. So I'm so excited to talk about this. So the Della and Lilah book series started with Della and Lilah meet the Monongahela Mermaid. And when my daughter, Della, was 5 years old, she was in kindergarten. She was very sick, and she was missing a lot of school due to pretty heavy illnesses that we, eventually had to address. But she was really sick, and she was just this little peanut, this little thing. And we were sitting at the kitchen table, and I was working on my laptop, and she was doing makeup work. She had about 25 or 30 million, somewhere in between there, worksheets that she had to complete. And she's a very good worker. She's a very good student. But I mean, when you're 5 and you're on worksheet number 15, you're probably going to ask for a break. You're probably going to get tired. So, I'm kind of pushing her through these worksheets so she can complete her work and not be too terribly behind when she eventually returns to school. And she said, "Mommy, can I have a break?" And I said, "Sure, you can have some goldfish, have a snack, and have some water." And so she got her snack and sat back down, and she was eating her fish, and she looked over at me and she said, "Can I tell you a story?" And I said, "Sure." So I closed my laptop and I said, "Yeah, tell me your story." And she said, "There's a mermaid." And I said, "Oh, a mermaid, I love mermaids." And she said, "The mermaid lives in the Monongahela River, right over there." And I opened my laptop back up and I said, "Tell me more." So I just questioned her about the story, and I prompted her, what did the mermaid look like? What was the mermaid's name? Was your sister there? Who else was there? How did the mermaid feel? She was sad. Well, why is the mermaid sad? Because there's pollution in the river. And I said, "Well, how can you fix that?" So we typed everything down. It almost happened in that one sitting. And then I read it and I thought, geez, this is cute. This is a cute story. It hits home for me. I grew up along the Monongahela River. I still kayak and swim and fish and boat, and I love the river. And so it sort of made me happy that she loved the river too, or loved it enough to at least tell a story about it. And she would tell stories all the time. She would make up songs. She writes music. She is constantly singing and performing and telling stories. But this one was particularly well done. This one was particularly good. I really enjoyed this one. And so I called her back the next day, because she eventually, went to lie down and went to sleep. And I called her back the next day and I said, "Della, can we talk about this story a little bit more?" And she said, "Oh yes, I would love to talk about this story." As a 5-year-old. So I asked her a few more questions, and she told me, because there were some loose ends, so we tied up some loose ends. And it was a story. It was a story from beginning to end, and it was a good story. So I thought, I'm going to edit this up for her, and maybe I'll print it and bind it or something, and we'll save it for our family. Well, when I'm editing it, and again, so as a mom with 2 young children, Della was 5, Lilah was 3. At the time, we read children's books constantly. I mean, we read children's books all the time. 2, 3, 4, 5 before bedtime. I mean, how many, can you read so you can not go to sleep,
Right.
So 5 in Della's room, 5 in Lilah's room. So, we're up to all these children's stories per night. So I felt like I really knew what would create, just as a consumer, a pretty good children's story. And I thought that Della's story had all of those aspects to create a really solid children's book. And I thought, well, maybe we could illustrate this, because there is some beautiful imagery in here. And I would love to see our home, our town, her friends and family in the book. I would love to see that artistically, illustrated. So I looked online, and I found this illustrator, who's our illustrator. Her name is Shawn, and her artwork just sort of spoke to me. Like it said, this is it. This is how this story needs to be represented. And I just loved her work, and it was so gentle and so beautiful, and had these gorgeous colors. And I sent her an email and I thought, well, surely she's not going to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, would you be interested in illustrating this children's story? And she said I would. And I sent her the manuscript and she illustrated it. And then I thought, well, I have all these beautiful illustrations. Now I'm going to have to do some design work and put the story together. One thing led to another.
Mm-hmm.
We eventually had a book. And I have to mention, so the book publishing and distribution process was certainly something that I didn't know anything about.
Mm-hmm.
And the learning curve for that was so steep, and we've talked about before.
Uh-huh.
I made every mistake you can make.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them twice.
Yeah.
Before I really understood what it took to publish and distribute a children's book in the distribution channels. So, it was a long process, but I did it for my girls.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that if I would have sat down and say, I'm going to write even though I would have loved to, I'm going to write a children's book on my own. I'm not sure I would have completed the process all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm.
But my children held me accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it for them. And I always thought, well, I'm an academic, I'm a writer.
Mm-hmm.
And I always considered myself a writer, but never an author. And I always considered myself creative, but never an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And so they gave me permission to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So answering to them and being held accountable to them really gave me permission to do that and to be an author and to be an artist for them as their mom.
Absolutely.
And so that's why it's my favorite project.
That is awesome. and before we actually get into some of the struggles that you faced, number one, I want to find out how you were able to get this done with everything that you had on your plate. I mean, what would you say made your time so effective in getting this done? I mean, you were already doing the other 2 or 3 projects that you were already working on as far as businesses goes, and then you had this on the table as well. How were you able to get all this done, and what are some good tips that helped you be a little bit more effective with your time?
So number one, I was held accountable by a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And
Right.
I'm sure
You're essentially their editor.
Yes, exactly. I was working for them, and I'm still working for them. So as you know, children can be very persistent.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mom, is it done? Mom, is it done? Mom, is it done? Mom, can I see it? Mom, is it done? Because they were little, they're 3 and 5. They're excited to see this story come to life. And so being held accountable.
Accountability is important.
Absolutely, by my children. And I carved out time every single night. I carved out time. The girls would go to bed, and I would, it's...
Like around what time would they go to bed?
Well, we would lay down at 8:30, and then about 10, I was walking out of their room.
Right.
So, I would work 10 to 12, 10 to 1 on these books, writing, editing, researching, designing it, putting together the pages in Photoshop, re-editing, and editing, and editing, and editing. And in the book, the text isn't just sort of typed at the bottom of the page. Like, it's stylized throughout the document, it's stylized throughout the book, it's different colors, there's different fonts, it's very much a children's book.
Mm-hmm.
So I would set aside time every night, and if not every night, at least every other night, I would put myself on my laptop and dedicate that specific time to this project. But I didn't mind. I loved it.
Right.
And if you're not doing something you love, you're never going to stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning when you have to get up at 6 the next morning to finish your project. This was a project that I loved. This was something I enjoyed more than anything else that I've ever done. And it was so exciting, and it was new, and it was for my family, and so just being so passionate about the work and loving it so much. I love working on the books, and they are time-consuming and difficult.
Yeah.
And I love every second of it. So you have to be passionate about what you're doing. And I know that sounds a bit cliche, but it is 100% accurate and 100% true. So being passionate about what you're doing, loving the process.
That's the key right there.
Loving everything that you're doing. And so that right there sort of motivates you to get it done. And you know, here is this beautiful end result. And we're very proud of it. And we worked really hard on it. In fact, my Della was also very integral in the research. So for example, I would say, Della, we're gonna go up into our library. It was upstairs in like the playroom. And I want you to find the book that you think is the best shape. So she took it very seriously, and she would look, and I'd say, okay, we're gonna go to the bookstore, and I want you to find the book that looks the best to you. And I want you to find the book that feels the best to you. So here's this kind of cover, here's this kind of cover, what feels best to you. And Della has struggled with sensory processing since she was very little. So these books actually feel sort of rubbery, and they don't have that dry, papery texture. And that was for her because that's what felt good to her. So that's what she chose for the material.
Keeping it authentic to her.
Yes, yes. And these were the sizes she chose. This is what she thought worked out well for her. And so she was, you know, she was very much part of the research.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
that's amazing. One of the things that we said, or that you said, as far as, you know, maximizing your time is having the passion. And as you were talking, I was sitting here thinking about it. I was like, passion pretty much equals loving the process. If you have passion for what you love, I mean, and not a lot of people actually break down what, you know, what does passion actually mean? Is it just you're emotional about it? It's like, you know, passion equals loving the process, good, bad, or indifferent. You know, no matter what. So that's what it really is when it comes to, you know, being truly passionate about what you do. You know, spending time in those late night hours, or, you know, editing night after night or every other night, or doing the research and trying to, you know, get the publishing stuff done. Like, that's what it's really all about. So if you have the passion and love the process of all those different things, no matter what, you're going to be able to get through it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, let's actually get into some of the challenges that you faced in the initial phases of actually getting started, because like you said, you had you knew nothing about publishing or anything like that. So what were some of the initial challenges that you faced that were like really great learning experiences that you look at now?
The entire project was a learning experience. Because I absolutely had no idea what book publishing was, what distribution was, and I really had no clue. The only publishing experience I had was from an academic perspective. So I went to an academic publishing house, and I said, would you be interested in printing this? And they said, sure, we'll print it.
Now, how did you find them real quick?
But I knew of them through textbook research from teaching.
Okay.
So I went to them and I just said, like when you put together manuscripts or workbooks for a specific class, you know, you can send your material to this particular group, and they can publish for you. So I thought, well, I've done that. You know, maybe it's the same. Spoiler, it's not.
Right. Okay.
It's not at all. So I went to them, and they said, well, you have to have your print-ready files just as you would have your print-ready files for your workbooks for class. And I said, well, how do you make a print-ready file? And they said, I don't know, look it up. Oh my gosh, okay.
Right.
So I bought Photoshop, and I watched on YouTube. I watched YouTube videos on how to import pictures and add text and do all those things. I don't know much about Photoshop, but I certainly know enough.
You can get the basics done.
Yes, and so I didn't know anything about that. And then I didn't know anything about bleeds or margins or the center gutter where you don't want your illustrations to fall, like the main part of your illustration to fall in there. I didn't know any of that. So every time I printed the book as a sample copy, something would be wrong. I'd say, okay, I'm going to fix this and send it back. But I wouldn't know because I didn't even know what I was looking at on my computer in those, you know, during those times that I was editing or laying out the book. And I did it all myself, so I really didn't know anything. I would encourage people to have a really good graphic designer. Okay. So if you're going to publish a children's book, you need a really excellent graphic designer. And you can find one on freelance websites, and you can sample their work and you can look at it if you don't know a graphic designer locally. So I would encourage encourage folks to have a graphic designer. So I learned all of the graphic design mistakes, or I learned from all of the graphic design mistakes, because I made all of them, every
Right.
one of them, and that's okay. I can admit that, I can say that, because we still have this award-winning book series that came from it, because you kept persevering, and you kept every hoop that, you know, came across your path. You jump through it, you jump through it, you jump through it. You just keep pushing, and you keep going, and you do that not because you hate it, and you don't, you know, because of the passion, because you love what you're doing. You're not going to jump through all those hoops or keep working through all your mistakes if you don't absolutely have the passion for the project. So that was one aspect. Distribution channels. We could have a whole podcast.
Yeah, just on that.
Yes, on effective distribution channels. So you have to. I would encourage people to do their research. Where do you want to sell your book? Where do you want your book to be sold? Distribution channels are very important, because when you're in specific distribution channels, your book is distributed to the people at the end of those channels. So if you want to be on Amazon and you're self-published, then go the Create Space route. But if you want to be in Barnes & Noble and you want to be an actual book on a shelf, then you need to go the agent-publisher route, because that space is reserved for that particular publishing company on that particular shelf in that particular store. So you just, again, being well-informed in regard to where you want your product to be and how you want it to get there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things that I definitely want to learn more about, is the distribution aspect, because eventually I do want to write a book as well. So, and also I know there's people out there that also want to write their own books and things like that. So understanding all these hoops and challenges that you face and how you overcame those are definitely highly valuable pieces of information. So definitely appreciate you sharing on that.
Of course.
And then, you know, and moving forward, where do you see this going in the future? Or actually, before we actually even get there, how did the second book come along? Because this is the second one as well. So how did this story get created?
So that's a fun story as well. So my family was invited to Europe, to England and Wales, for a European book tour, because our illustrator, Sean.
One of the big things that came out of this book was awesome experience.
Yes, it was so fun. I keep saying everything was so fun, but it was.
Yeah.
It's been fun. It's always so fun. And so we were invited to Europe to do book signings, and at Waterstones, which is sort of like a Barnes & Noble in England and Wales where we were, and it was a very short trip. It was 4 nights, and we were covering just under 2,000 miles in all of this time, or in the short amount of time, excuse me. So we thought maybe we should leave Lila with my parents and my in-laws. So 2 nights with my parents, 2 nights with my in-laws. It's, you know, Lila gets a very special vacation. And Lila was mad. Lila was very mad that she was left behind. But flying, you know, across the ocean and the time zones, and you're trying to have a 3-year-old sleep, and just
Be too much.
Oh my goodness, it would be so much. And Della's a very good traveler, and Lila, admittedly, is not the best traveler. She would just rather not. So we thought she should stay home with our parents, and she did. And one of the activities that she did while we were away is she visited Fort Necessity in Farmington, or near Farmington, Pennsylvania, which was very influential in the War of 1812. Oh my gosh, the French and Indian War, excuse me. So she was very, very taken by that. She was very, she remembered so much about it, and she had so much to tell me, and all of these stories about General Braddock and George Washington and the Battle of the Monongahela and everything that happened at Fort Necessity and Jumonville Glen. So all of these really historical facts, you know, she was sort of telling me the stories, and she was very excited about it. So this book,
Pop open the laptop.
yeah, exactly. And I thought, okay, well, we did it for Della. Let's do this with Lila. So this book is about this story, Della and Lilah and the Treasure Adventure, is explains a little bit of southwestern Pennsylvania history. It explains the significance of the history in regard to what was going on in the world in general, the political climate of the time, and like, why would a child be interested in reading this book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because who, like, as a child, are you really that interested in
Right.
History? So we did it as Della and Lilah embark on a treasure adventure, and they're searching for General Braddock's buried treasure, which is historically accurate, and it hasn't been found yet
Mm-hmm.
that we know of
Mm-hmm.
publicly.
Just throwing that out there.
Yes, yes, and there are many treasure hunters, treasure seekers who try and find General Braddock's buried treasure. So, Della and Lilah go on a treasure hunt to find General Braddock's buried treasure, and we sort of integrate the history in the children's story, and what you find out at the end, that treasure that isn't always buried in the ground, and treasure isn't necessarily gold bars and gems and coins. Treasure is the journey you take, the people you're with, and the journey of life itself. So although those concepts seem a little advanced for a young reader, I don't think that they are. I think that children can truly understand being present in a situation and enjoying what they're doing. I think children do that a lot better than adults do. So that's how Della and Lilah and the Treasure Adventure came about.
I think that is a beautiful story for sure, and I love how you've been able to incorporate your family into doing this. And I know with a lot of people that may have children, may find it a little difficult to maybe start businesses or something creative and things like that. And I just love how you've been able to incorporate them into what you already love to do. And I think you're a great example of being able to do this. Definitely proud of the work that you're doing. Definitely excited to see all the things that you'll be able to do in the future. So definitely doing great work. So in going into the future, where do you see yourself going with this in the next maybe 2 to 5 years? Or what's the big goal? What's the big vision for yourself? Or the family?
Yes, yeah, so that's a really good question. Our next book comes out in this October, so October 2018. And it will be the final book in the River children's book series, the Monongahela River children's book series. So it's Della and Lilah meet the Monongahela monster, who really isn't a monster. He's just misunderstood. Which I think is really appropriate for the current climate that we're living in. And I think it's relevant. It's also Pittsburgh, because we write about the Monongahela River, we write about southwestern Pennsylvania, and I grew up hearing stories about the Monongahela monster and being afraid of going in the river and something would happen. But what if everyone is afraid of this quote-unquote monster and he's not really a monster? Or she's not really a monster. So we delve into that. We explore that a little bit, and so that'll be the third and final in the Monongahela series. And then I'm currently working on a book.
Okay.
I currently have a book project in the works, which again I never thought that I would do. I always thought about it, I always dreamed about it, but I never thought it would be a reality until I was able to do this for my children. Yes. So I'll be writing a book, and Della is currently writing her own young adult novel chapter book, and she's typing it on her own, and I don't know anything about it, except that it's about halfway finished, and she's working very hard on it.
Wow.
And so I see us working more with the book series. I'm very, very proud of my girls. I'm very proud of them. And they work really hard. Pittsburgh Magazine named the book Best of the Burgh. The Girls World Expo named Della and Lilah Girls of Merit Award winners. And we were just recently working with WQED for Fred Rogers' Be My Neighbor Day. And we were just recently, last weekend, at the Carnegie Science Center for River Weekend. And we partner with a lot of the Pittsburgh organizations focused on children and families around the city. We've done the WPXI Holiday Parade, we've done Kennywood, Kids Fest, we've done book signings at Barnes & Noble, we've done events all over the place. And yes, that's so much fun, and yes, that's very exciting, but that's a lot of hard work for two little girls. And they're present at all of those events. And
they're like celebrities.
Well, Well, that's very sweet that you would say that, but they don't even know
Right.
that this isn't normal.
Right.
And so they're very humble and they're very grounded in regard to the book series. And when we were at the Science Center last weekend, so in the book, The Monongahela Mermaid, Marina collects river treasures, so freshwater clamshells, coins, river stones, and she makes jewelry out of it. She makes bracelets and necklaces. So we had a craft for the children to make bracelets and necklaces out of river treasures.
Mm-hmm.
And Lila sat for 8 hours on Saturday and 8 hours on Sunday and taught every child that came in there. They enjoy it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they enjoy this, but they don't even know
Right.
that this is
The
a
magnitude
little
of
bit,
this.
that it's a little bit different maybe, you know, than what some other children are experiencing. And that being said, which is why that whole reason that they have these, you know, they have these beautiful experiences, we donate our proceeds from our book and merchandise sales to a different nonprofit each quarter. So we just did a back to school drive and we delivered 30 book bags to 2 different elementary schools, so 60 total, and we packed them with the school supplies. So we really believe in giving back. Like, that's really part of the whole process and who we are and what we do. So not only do they work very hard outside of the normal realm of like childhood, you know, they work hard. They have jobs. They go and they volunteer at different community events. They are constantly raising money for other children, and I think it's really important to mention how hard they work and to what end, right? Like, it's not to necessarily further advance their careers as authors or co-authors. It's to help other children, and that's really important to me, and that's really important to our whole mission as the book series.
Mm-hmm. That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing for sure. So how can people get in contact with you, the book? Where's the best place for people to reach you and all the things that you're doing?
So social media,
Absolutely.
of course.
Bring it all around.
Okay. So you can find us on Twitter at Della and Lilah. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Della and Lilah. I'm on LinkedIn for my own work as a media strategist and a CEO for our businesses. And we also have a website, www.dellaandlila.com, all spelled out, DELLAANDLILA.com, and you can read all about us and watch our videos and just sort of get to know us. And I would love to hear from anyone who's watching the 24-hour podcast, 24-hour Hustle podcast. I would love to hear from your viewers, and you can find our books at a lot of the local shops around the city. We're available on Amazon, we're available on barnesandnoble.com, we're available on walmart.com, and of course we're available on our own website through our own store.
Right. Well, that is awesome. And then as we always do when we wrap up episodes, what is a 24-hour challenge that you would propose to the audience that they can actually take action on within the next 24 hours of watching this episode?
Okay, so I'm going to talk directly to the audience.
Go
so
for
what
it.
camera am I looking
Get
at?
intimate. It could be
Okay,
that
right
one.
here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Right in their face.
Yes, I am here. My name is Brianne Mitchell from the Della and Lilah book series, and I'm here to challenge you to a kindness challenge. So what I'm asking you to do for the next 24 hours is to be kind, but not when it's easy, when it's hard, when you're in a hurry, when you're in the car, when you're experiencing maybe a little bit of road rage because 376 is backed up beyond anything you've ever seen before.
Right.
Be kind to the person in the next car, be kind to the person in that line, because you don't know what their story is and you don't know how much your kindness will impact other people. So I am challenging you to be kind, not when you feel like being kind, but when you don't feel like being kind, because that's what can really help people and make a difference.
Absolutely. Awesome challenge. And if you do accept that challenge, make sure you share your experiences with us in the comment section of what you did. Maybe that moment of rage you may be feeling in that traffic and you're actually doing something kind. So definitely share that with us, your experience, maybe even a previous one, but we want to know how you're being kind to others. So that was definitely a good challenge. So I definitely appreciate you for being on the show. We definitely should do it again in the future because, like I said, I totally believe in what you're doing, proud of the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And I think you have a hugely bright future for sure. So we will definitely be following what you will be doing.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So exciting, so fun. I love it. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for being on. So now that we know what Bree does with her 24 hours, we want to know what you do with your 24 hours. Definitely make sure you comment down below if you accept that challenge. Make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and we will see you on the next episode.